Now, I want to find out where you're at in terms of this context of thinking about entrepreneurship. Because sometimes we think an entrepreneur is somebody that's like a founder, they've got a big business, like they've done something amazing, they've raised capital. But I think we're going to have a poll here, and I'd like to know, where are you now? So you can use the poll, or maybe you can use the question chat box. Just tell me, 1 to 5, do you think or identify with the notion of being corporate entrepreneur, corporate innovator, entrepreneur, founder, an entrepreneur, which is where you're like an entrepreneur for your employer, or a social innovator, or something else? So corporate innovator is usually somebody that works for a large corporate, big, maybe multinational, national firm that's doing still some innovation. Entrepreneur, a lot of people think about that as somebody who's had their own business, or, founder, that sort of context. But we have entrepreneur, who basically seeks out and tries to solve problems. Then we have founder, which is kind of like the person that, established the business. We have entrepreneur, where you're like an entrepreneur, but for your employer, in whatever context that is. And then we have social innovator, right? So social innovator is somebody who cares about for purpose and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for example. Okay, so we have a little bit of a split here, saying entrepreneur 25%, entrepreneur 20%, other is 60%. So I'd love you to tell me in the question chat box, like, what your other is about. Because the key thing that we're discussing here is that regardless of the job role that you are involved in, this entrepreneurial mindset is the key to what you're doing now, even if you don't know that that's what it's described as or called, and also what you want to do into the future. Now, I want to think about the current and future version of yourself. So we're always doing like training needs analysis and self-reflection here. And we're introducing the notion of entrepreneurship, or an entrepreneurial mindset, as a core capability that you guys all need. Every job role does, but in relation to what you do, you need it in a very specific way, which we'll come to shortly, right? So this is an image from Sliding Doors. Some of you hopefully are old enough to remember that movie. But if you could put into the question chat box, thinking about your current self and your future self, in terms of your skills and capability, what is the number one thing that you need to focus on? When you're comparing your current self and your future self, what is the key capability gap that you think is, the number one area there? So Cecile, you're saying that you need to focus on self-confidence and updating your skills. Yeah, let's see what other people say. Now, I think entrepreneurs are so guilty of this, but we probably are in other contexts. The fact that we can undermine ourselves, and we can have imposter syndrome, we can be in meetings, we can be at events, we can be meeting VIPs, ministers, key contacts. You're often working with CEOs or leaders of organizations. And the fact that you are, their absolute backup, and you have that back no matter what, sometimes it can be intimidating, perhaps, in terms of who you're meeting. Balance of work and personal. So Catherine, I don't know if you also have this in terms of, say, workaholic, but the notion of switching off from work can maybe be hard. And perhaps some of you have got family, carer, partner, other sorts of responsibilities, right? That can be really key. Yeah, and then technical knowledge, Monique, I think that's fabulous, because even like in the way that we're talking about entrepreneurship, like there's a lot of lingo, right? And it's kind of like, can we apply that language in relation to, you might be in a specific industry sector which has its own lingo and acronyms and all that kind of thing. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your approach to this. So let's get into some knowledge that's specifically related to entrepreneurship and innovation, okay? A couple of models that I want to share with you, which is kind of like the ideal, and then we'll go to what the reality actually is. But you would probably all know that I'd imagine that you'd have to make conversation with literally anybody and everybody. You might be, meeting somebody in the lobby, in the reception space, in the boardroom, virtually online, and you have to kind of have this, conversation that can come on any topic almost to literally make the person feel comfortable. And there's so many topics that you have to kind of know about, right? So what we're talking about here is a couple of models. The first model is the lean, well, there's two ways to put this, the lean startup canvas or business model canvas. Can everyone put into the question chat box to let me know if you've heard of this, yes or no? So lean business model or business model canvas, have you heard of this, yes or no? Okay, so in entrepreneur land, these are the key kind of frameworks that we use. Now, if you have a look at this particular format, you can Google it and find, the origins, I guess, and similar formats of this. But the key with an entrepreneurial mindset is that you start with the problem first. What does everyone else start with? They start with trying to make a solution fit. So problem first, okay? We look at key metrics, unique value proposition, what's the unfair advantage? Who are the actual customers? How are we going to get to them through the channels? Definitely we'll look at costs and revenue, because if we can't make this work financially, which could be also for purpose, not always for profit, but still, you have to make that kind of money to put back into other things. So business model canvas, lean canvas is the go-to model for startups and that kind of entrepreneurial thinking. The next framework, and let me know yes or no if you've heard of this, is a scaling up framework. So put into the question chat box. In relation to scaling up framework, this is by Vern Harnish, a guy from the US. So for our US friends, you may have heard of this or you may not, but it does have a bit of a US context to it. So often what I'm finding with the scale ups that we're working with and the people that want to build that entrepreneurial muscle to the next level, we have to kind of like contextualize it. Even in Australian context, it's different to a US context, right? So there's four main things that this framework focuses on. Managing your people, having a strategy with a vision, mission, big goals, having that documented, communicating that well. Execution, it's like, hey, you can have all this stuff, but are you actually following through on it? And then the cash, the money, the resources side of it. The fifth thing that I'd add to this model is this industry-specific approach, because you can't just do all of this and then not know about, oh, we're in food, we're in beverages, we're in aged care, we're in disability, we're in, finance, whatever the industry context is, that's really important. So another reference for you to check out if you're interested in building your entrepreneurial mindset and understanding is the Scale Up Framework by Vern Harnish. So we've done on the kind of like key theories. There's basically, it's pretty simple. A lot of stuff boils down to these two ones. Like there'll be various versions of if you do a big search. But what I want to share with you is kind of like the theory versus the reality. And I would imagine that as executive assistants and VAs, there's been many times when you've had to problem solve. Put into the question chat box, yes or no, if there's been like a moment, maybe running an event, meeting somebody, trying to pull off, some sort of project where there's been an absolute moment of stress. Tell me yes or no if you've had those moments of stress. Yes or no? Yeah. So I think we've all had them, and you've literally got to be cool as a cucumber. And just last week, I was running an event here in Adelaide for 200 people. And guess what? The AV, the audio visual, like literally wasn't working. We'd been setting up for like an hour or two. And then we get down to the line and we had to bring in, speakers, and we had to call up somebody to try and get those resources at the last minute. And we have the Deputy Premier, she's in the red in this photo from South Australia. We had VIPs, we're like, oh, far out. There's no way that we can't not deliver on this. So the notion is cool as a cucumber. This is the key capability, even though all this stuff is going on in the background. And hopefully I look, my hair's nice and straight. I've had my, hair on this day, but hopefully I look cool as a cucumber. And then the Deputy Premier of the state was having a fabulous time. But this is what it's really like. There's the theory and then it's the reality of how stressful these things can actually be. But this is a core of the capability that I would say that you probably all have, right? But maybe you've never thought about it in terms of an entrepreneurial approach, because literally what you're doing is problem solving first, finding a solution, getting validation, getting others on board with you, communicating this. This core capability is key. And we haven't got a huge amount of time to go through this take action picture or system, but we'll definitely share this with you afterwards. This is what we use for strategic workforce planning and development, but I'd like you to think about applying it to yourself. So just quickly, if you can put into the question chat box, what are you finding is happening in the workforce or the workplace at the moment? So the full picture is where we start. You can have a look at this later, but basically we do the full picture, then we look at what's happening at this time. What are your strengths and what are your gaps? Where do you want to go to in the future? And I guess this is the hardest bit, to be fair, because we don't often think about 3, 5, 10 years, and probably through the last couple of years, it seems hard to do that kind of perspective. But if you can be clear about, from a career point of view, where do you want to go? Who do you want to work for? What brand, because you're literally a brand ambassador. What brands do you want to represent? What values do you want to portray? That's key. And then we do a process of evaluating the gaps, addressing the gaps, then through coaching and co-design, what are the solutions we'll put in place, setting timelines and targets, and then inspiring for implementation, thinking about ongoing review of your professional development and your skills, and then what's the next version of yourself. Now, we talked about in the description for this session 21st century capabilities, right? There are 9, okay? So if you've got a notepad and pen, I know it's old school, or if you've got your phone, or maybe you've got your computer or laptop or whatever, you might want to screenshot this, or maybe just copy down 1 to 9. But I wanted to share with you, these are the key capabilities that everyone needs, but you in particular for the roles that you're playing at the moment. This notion of adaptability and emotional management, and we'll flesh this out shortly. Communication and influence, right? So it's not, it's not basic communication that you're doing. It is nuanced. It is in a specific context. You have a high degree of tacit knowledge that's embedded in your brain about who's who, how things work. You're very observational, right? And you're very, I'm sure, tactful and diplomatic. So these are core capabilities. Digital and social is really important now too, right? So how you represent yourself online and also face-to-face, and then having that cultural and global perspective and dealing with different contexts in your own country and cultures in your own country, as well as potentially doing some international work. So there's 9. This is the first 4 that you might want to take a pic of, or just document somehow. Now, I just want to draw out the notion of digital and social, and encourage you to really just reflect upon how you're branding yourself online. You may have heard, through the future sessions about the metaverse and some of the other tech innovations are happening, and the fact that you can have multiple avatars or versions of yourself. But in the roles that you're playing, people want to see the person online matches the person in real life. And you may be doing some help around, socials for the business that you work for, the organization. But it's really important that your LinkedIn profile is on point. And you might also want to consider some of these other socials. However, you might also be doing this for the employer that you work for. The Facebook page, the Instagram, the reviews on Google, Facebook, and searching, and then also a website too. Now, if you want to delve into that area of adaptability and emotional management, I'm just going to recommend quickly a book by Gary Vee, who a lot of people follow on social media. He's American. You might have heard of him. Let me know in the question chat box if you've heard of him. He basically documents his life all the time. He lives in New York, and he's who a lot of entrepreneurs look up to. He's got 12 kind of capabilities. And then he's got 12 and a half, which is kind candor. So this sort of fleshes out that area of adaptability and emotional management. And I guess you can look at this in terms of self-assessment of your skills and your capabilities. 5 through to 9, so having a purpose and a vision. Like, it's not just about, online learning or continuous learning. It's about mastery. And I would suggest to you that many of you actually do master these skills incredibly well. This is what makes you stand out. Your ability to host, to introduce, to connect, to preempt, to understand what your executive or your client might actually need. Intelligence and imagination is key. Also thinking about science, technology, engineering and maths and entrepreneurship, and then managing your career and also the broader workforce. Because some of you might have your own business, you might have your own team. Like, let me know in the question chat box if that's the context for you. Are you kind of like a solo EA or VA? So put this into question chat box. Solo, VA, EA. Do you manage a team? Do you manage your own organization? Because that's really important. Last couple of things, because sometimes this notion of entrepreneurship, people think, oh, it's not me. I'm an executive assistant, I'm a virtual assistant, I work to support, certain clients, and an entrepreneur is somebody that maybe looks like Gary Vee in the bottom left corner, the guy from Shark Tank from the US in the top right, the top left, I should say. But often what we're finding is it's women. There's a photo there of young women who are doing some work at high school, and then a group of Indonesian women that we've worked with. But all of the evidence actually points towards entrepreneurs who are starting their own business being women who are over 40. That is the number one category internationally, so that may or may not be you. But sometimes we have these assumptions, right, about what we can do.